I want you to take 5 seconds to get 3 influential African Americans in your head. You, what'd you think of?
The lady at the back of the bus.
What'd you think of?
Barack Obama.
You.
Malcolm X.
You.
Martin Luther King.
Go ahead.
Michael Jordan.
Well, I'm gonna add a few limitations. It can't be Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Jackie Robinson, Barack Obama, or Harriet Tubman. Don't worry, I can't read your mind, but I can read your faces. Your mind is blank, isn't it? But it's not your fault. We've been taught the same 6 people and the 6 names during Black History Month, and after 12 years, it's become repetitive. If you allow me to have a moment of your time, I will give you a few who are just as important as those names that we hear over and over again. LeBron James, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson are arguably a few of the greatest NBA players of all time, but they wouldn't have had the opportunity to even be good if it wasn't for Nathaniel Clifton. Anybody know the name of the most famous all-black team back then? No? Alright. It was the Harlem Globetrotters. Nathaniel played for the Harlem Globetrotters. They were so good that the NBA kind of used them as a publicity stunt. They had them play at the arenas, and they made mad money those days. Seeing Clifton's talent, the Knicks wanted to sign him, but we all know what the late 1940s looked like. Segregation everywhere. So they couldn't, until they threatened to leave the league, and clearly the Knicks are still in the league, and they're actually doing quite well, although they lost Game 7, so let's take a moment of silence. I said silence. So once they drafted him, people followed after. The Celtics drafted Chuck Cooper, and the Washington Capitals drafted Earl Lloyd. The Washington Capitals are not a team anymore. They only lasted about a year. Rebecca Lee Crumpler. The outfit makes sense, guys, right? Oh, that's wonderful. Rebecca Lee Crumpler was raised by her aunt in Pennsylvania. Her aunt was kind of like a nurse. She just cared for the sick, which drove her to her career choice. In 1852, Crumpler moved to Massachusetts and worked as a nurse for 8 years. Not gonna lie, me personally, I wouldn't have trusted her to be my nurse because the first formal nursing school didn't open until 1873. After being a nurse, she was admitted into the New England Female Medical College. So maybe I could have trusted her because she received a plethora of letter recommendations to go to the school. So she did her 4 years and she received her MD degree, being the first to graduate from the female medical college as well as the first black female physician in the U.S. Yup. For people of color, their voices are overlooked and often ignored in medical offices. And this happened to my own mother, who was misdiagnosed due to her being ignored, and it almost cost her her life. After just having me while she was in the hospital, she was telling her doctor that she was having extreme pains above her abdomen. The doctor said,
"She needs an MRI now!"
Anyway, he told the nurse to bring her just antacids. After about an hour of complaining about the constant badgering pain, a group of interns came in and said,
"She actually needs an MRI now."
Which led to her being diagnosed with hepatic vein obstructions or blood clots taking up half of her liver. If this wasn't caught when it was, my mother could have lost blood flow from her liver to her heart, which, ended up with her. She's not dead. I promise. She's not dead. So Rebecca chose to do the same, or kind of the same thing to avoid things from happening like that, where she treated people who were just freed from slavery because their voices were being ignored. So why can't we do the same for her, and listen to her story that are from her words that are adopted in her book, A Book of Medical Discourses. Raise your hand if you thought of Rosa Parks when I told you to get in your head 3 influential African Americans. Wow, actually there's a lot of them. What if I told you that she wasn't the first to give up her seat, or refused to give up her seat? On March 2nd, 1995, Claudette Colvin refused to give up her seat to a white passenger. Now, Rosa Parks did the same thing 9 months later. So she was arrested and she sat in jail terrified because you just didn't know what white people were going to do to you back then. She was terrified that she was going to get abused physically, mentally, or sexually. After she was released and she went home, her family thought of possible retaliations. Then the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People decided to think that Claudette's case would be the one to use to challenge segregation, but they decided not to because of her age, being that she was 15, and she became pregnant and she wasn't married, which the church lady said, no, we're not having that. So she couldn't become the face of the movement, and that's when Miss Rosa, she came in and she became the face of the movement because she fundraised for Colvin's case, and she got involved with the youth council. They thought she would be the perfect face for the movement. And here's the quote that Claudette said. "My mother told me to be quiet about what I did. She told me to let Rosa be the one. White people aren't going to bother Rosa. They like her." Rosa Parks was older, she was light-skinned, she was a church lady, and she was middle class. So who would have loved that? Like, come on, let's be for real. Oh, just kidding. How would you like it if someone took credit for something that you started, or let alone something that you started that was going to have a positive impact on you and the people around you and the ones to come after you?
Not going to support that.
I know we've all colored these. We read this. We've seen this movie a few times. And we even lived in history with this guy. And I know we've all seen the picture of Harriet Tubman holding her lantern, leading the slaves. I know you know exactly what you're But this isn't going to cut it anymore. We are being set up by our education systems because we have a limited education. I know every single African American who has done something that impacted our lives and the world around us can't be taught. One, because February is the shortest month of the year with 28 days. Well, they all have 28 days, but you get the point, right? And there are simply just too many people who have done something important to impact our lives. So what can we do to change the curriculum? For starters, we don't need to spend a whole month on Martin Luther King. We just talked about him in January. You know, the day we have off, MLK Day, January 15th. Yeah, that's about him. We can do our research to find other African Americans that can be talked about. We can talk about the first doctors, the first teachers, the first lawyers, the inventors, like James McCune Smith, Charlotte E. Ray, Macon Bolin Allen, I promise that's his actual name, Susie King Taylor, Patricia Bath, and Garrett Morgan. These people are the ones changing history, but are never talked about. Making history for African Americans was not easy, and they had to be bold, courageous, and selfless in the face of adversity. So I want to go back to these people. You all like these people, right? Yeah, they're all good? Oh, that wasn't too convincing. If it wasn't for him, because he actually said no at first, because he didn't want to be put out in the face of adversity, because of course you're going to get hated for that and nobody's going to want to follow after you. But just kidding. His besties are not, well, these people are now his best friends because they went after him and they chose to stick together, because you're going to face a lot when you're going through something that's out of the ordinary. And now they're in the Hall of Fame, and their children actually are like close together because they're now a little family, because they want to continue to keep the legacy alive and talk about their parents. She is one of the reasons why I want to be a doctor today, because if it wasn't for her, or people like her, because obviously she didn't save my mom, but my mom wouldn't have been alive still if it wasn't for people like her. And she's known, but she's not very well known because of the fact that Rosa Parks took over and took the fame. But I don't blame Rosa Parks because there still has to be someone to do it. But at the same time, it would be nice if Claudette was mentioned. So as I close, I want you to think again about 3 influential African Americans, but this time I want you to wonder. Thank you for your time.